Road Atlanta is the Indy 500 of club racing in the United States. The runoffs represent the gathering of the best cars and drivers in the same place, all to achieve a similar goal. To win the Nationals, it takes a competitive car, a real competent crew, a fast driver, and some luck. A winning race team effort is the combination of a car, crew, and driver. We have a very competitive car. The suspension is state of the art as the rules are written today. The chassis is a tube frame and was designed on a computer. The brakes are four-wheel discs with four-piston calipers and vented rotors on the front. The engine is a product of 15 years of racing A-Series motors. Our crew is very special. Not only do they maintain the car, but have spent hundreds of hours in its building. We feel very fortunate to have Doug Peterson, four-time national champion, as our driver for this season. The thing I like about Doug is that he started racing in Anglia and has progressed into the professional level of motorsports. Each track has its own set of problems to solve, which hopefully can be worked out in the practice sessions. In practice sessions, we always size up the competition for that event. Practice sessions are very important as this is your only real chance to change the car. Going over our pre-race checklist is something we do before every race. The purpose of the checklist is to eliminate human error. Once the checklist is completed and the car is taken to the track, the race now belongs to the driver. The SCCA is divided into 6 divisions. For a driver to qualify for the national championships at Road Atlanta in October, he must finish in the top 4 places of his own division to get an invitation. The Fortech Mini has participated in the Road Atlanta runoffs 12 of the past 14 years. I think 1989 will be a very special year. We have a very competitive car, we have a great crew, and we have the fastest driver. I think 1989 will be a championship season.
Well, I got involved in minis in the mid-60s when I read about them in magazines and was excited about them. Looked like a fun little car. And in 1967, I managed to badger my father into buying a brand new 67 Cooper S. And then I sort of inherited it from him in 1970 and played with it on my own. And that's how I got involved with minis in the first place. I still have the car. It's sitting in my garage. It gets driven about 100 miles a year. That way I don't have to ever work on it. When we first started with the car in 1977, all the suspension pickup points were standard from as BMC built them. In 1977 though, the SCCA threw us a curve. They allowed us to run 13-inch wheels rather than the standard 10-inch diameter wheels. And that made the suspension, in lowering the car, that made the suspension geometry a big problem. And so what we did in 77 is, I think we were among the first people in the United States anyway, as soon as SCCA allowed rule changes to where we could do suspension pickup point modifications, we jumped on it and redesigned all the front suspension, moved the mounts up and in and around so we get all the camber gain and bump steer and everything in line with the new 13-inch wheels, and it paid off right away. The car was immediately quicker, the tires lasted longer, and the car just responded well to tuning, whereas the old 10-inch wheels, it really didn't respond very well. In 1978, we had run the black car for 2 years, and we feel like we'd gone as far as we could with that particular chassis, and the SCCA was allowing more and more they were liberalizing the rules more and more, and we finally decided that we'd be better off in building a brand new car with all the new changes we could make rather than continuing to update the old car. So we started that in late '78 and built a new car which had a much stronger chassis with better roll cage integration. We were allowed to go to coilover springs and shocks as opposed to the rubber donuts that were in the stock standard car. And that allowed us to improve the performance dramatically and also keep the car much more consistent during a race. And the old car, over a period of a 30-minute race, your lap time would drop probably 2 to 3 seconds because the tires would start to go away because of the bad suspension geometry. And in the new car, we could run much closer to a qualifying pace, although we still couldn't do it, but we could come a lot closer. So the second car was further away from a street car, and all the pickup points had changed. There were a lot of things cut up and modified that we didn't do on the first car. So we had deviated quite a bit from the street car concept at that point. In 1984, Mike and I decided to get together again and do an effort to win the SCCA runoffs at Road Atlanta in October. To do that, we realized the most important thing there was horsepower, because it's a very fast track. And so we went back and rethought the engines within reason. Now, we didn't try to redevelop the wheel, but we wanted to optimize what we had. So we went back and Mike did some work and research with Richard Longman, and he came up with some first-class cylinder heads for us. And we went back and did some more work on the bottom end, camshafts and rocker ratios, valve springs, things like that. And we were able to get we built new exhaust headers, the exhaust system we changed a lot, and we ended up getting, in 1984, 136 horsepower, which is pretty good for one of those engines. And it made a big difference at the runoffs. We were able to run, wasn't any faster in a straight line. As far as top speed is about 118 miles an hour, which is where this brick seems to stop. But we'd accelerate much faster out of the corners. Throttle response was much better, and we were able to handily win the race over cars that were up to 8 miles an hour faster than we were in a straight. So it paid off. Our national championship win in Atlanta in 1984 was especially satisfying because Mike and I had been working so long on the Mini. From 1977, we'd been beating our heads, racing against B210s and cars that were much faster once again in the straights than we were. And we were finally able to put the program together against very good competition and pull off a win. And it was extremely satisfying. It's nice to see the Mini back in the winner's circle after 13 years. After our win in 1984, we were trying to decide where to go from there, what would be the next step for the Mini. And at that time, SCCA once again changed the rules, and they were allowing us to build what is called a tube frame car, which in other words, it's a complete race car tube frame chassis inside a stock body, as opposed to having to use the stock tub and build a car, race car out of that. So with that major rules change, we realized there were some big performance gains to be had by doing that. So over the 86 season, we designed and built a tube frame Mini chassis utilizing a little higher technology, in that we used computers to design the suspension geometry in conjunction with a fellow, Terry Satchel of General Motors Engineering. He helped us on the suspension geometry. And towards the end of 86, we finished the car, and all we did was built the basic chassis and suspension arms and whatnot, and Mike's shop at Fortech actually did the majority of the building of the car, the finishing of the chassis. And he had, it paid off in 1986. Dwayne Davis drove the car at Atlanta and won the national championship with it first time out.
At the front, the tube frame chassis features Turbo Metro vented 10-inch brake rotors, 4-piston Lockheed calipers such as those used on a Formula Atlantic car. Fabricated hubs attach to Turbo Metro drive flanges, and the brake hoses are of the steel-braided aircraft type. Fox coilover shock absorbers are fully and very simply adjustable for both compression and rebound. The front suspension is of rocker arm type, similar in design to that used in a Swift Formula Ford. Chassis roll is controlled by a 5-position adjustable arm attached to a tubular torsion bar. The torsion bar can be changed for one of a different rate if necessary. All suspension motion is transmitted through Heim joints. Ride height is easily adjustable at the shock absorber. Caster and camber are also controlled through adjustable links and Heim joints. The cockpit is well protected within the extremely rigid tube frame structure. Gear selection is via a rod chain shifter. Full instrumentation includes water and oil temperature, oil pressure, engine revs, and fuel pressure. An hour meter helps to keep tabs on maintenance. The rear suspension consists of fabricated arms controlled by fully adjustable Fox coilover shock absorbers. Braking in the rear is provided by solid discs operated through the usual stainless steel braided aircraft hoses. Fuel is carried in an 8-gallon fuel cell built into the chassis. Additionally, the car carries an onboard fire extinguisher usually a video camera, as well as extra ballast to bring it up to the minimum weight requirements for GT5. The engine is tilted forward to achieve optimum drive shaft angularity. Atop the engine and attached to the chassis is an aluminum air box which houses the split Weber carburetors through which the engine breathes.
Engine reliability is our number one concern. Horsepower output is also important, but it doesn't make any sense to build something that won't finish a race. So engine reliability, the best hardware possible, is always what we strive to accomplish. The crankshafts are made in England. They're a forged steel billet crankshaft. They're manufactured by Gordon Allen Crankshaft Company. The crankshaft, as you can see, is cross-drilled, both rods and mains. This allows maximum oil to get to the bearings. The steel main cap that we use on the center is secured by 4 bolts. This keeps the crank from flexing, which in turn keeps the crankshaft where it's supposed to be, perpendicular. This is one of our main caps off the engine. The connecting rods that are also a billet machine unit. They're made by Corello in Los Angeles. We use Cosworth pistons. We've been using them since 1984, and they are a very, very good product. Their quality is impeccable, and the rings that they come up with using are much thinner than the competition rings that British Leyland supplied, and they have a very long life. They'll last twice as long as a British Leyland ring. The cylinder head that we use is a Richard Longwood cylinder head. It's one of his heads that he does especially for us. We contact him directly and give him our specifications for what we're trying to achieve as far as either a lot of top end or maybe a little more mid-range cylinder heads. He can port them to your specifications, but when he does our cylinder heads, he tends to do them for the top end, which is what we really require at Toyota Atlanta. Top end, straightaway speed. We use a special head gasket on our engines. It's a stock turbo mini head gasket. It's somewhat different than a competition head gasket in that it has a built-in steel ring around the cylinder, both on the top and the bottom. This ring indexes into a chamfer cut into the block. So when the head gasket sits down, it actually indexes into this locating ring. What you get there is absolutely no cylinder leakage between the cylinders, where it's always been a problem on all people that race minis over the years. The rockers are the Titan units. The ratio is a 1.5. Probably the most unreliable piece on the whole car has been the gearbox. Although the jackknives have proven reliable, it's only through very high maintenance schedules you can keep them that way. You have to change the bearings, change the lay shafts, change anything that can wear on a regular basis way before it can break. We pre-oil the transmission lay shaft. We take the oil pressure off a T that goes to the oil pressure gauge, run full engine oil pressure to the lay shaft. This keeps the bearings lubricated, keeps them cool. Without doing that, the lay shaft won't last on these new setups. There's two choices for limited slip on a Mini these days. The first one is the old standby Salisbury limited slip. It's been used for years and years and years. It's a very good unit, but these components are very hard to get a hold of now. The clutch packs to replace them are not made any longer, so they've come up with a new setup, which we're very excited about. It's the Gleason-Torsen differential. It doesn't use a clutch pack as a Salisbury does. It uses a set of tapered gears inside this housing. A lot of people in racing have been using these for quite a while, and they've just become available for our type of car. The advantages are a lot easier steering input, and also the fact that they are available and they give very good positive traction operation. Most of the components on our engines has been tried and proven over the years. Everything. And there's nothing on this car that we could lay claim to that we developed. We have to give credit to all the other fine people that have done all the real hard work. We just put the pieces together and try to use the best hardware, the best components. Don't skimp on anything. And the car is a really reliable race car, as reliable as anything else that's racing. We've never had a major blow up in the last 7 or 8 years. And considering we run the car to 9,200 RPM on the straightaway at Road Atlanta, and considering it's a 3-main motor, that's a pretty good reliability record. Maintenance is one of the key figures. You have to do maintenance on a car. You can't wait for something to break. You have to do the maintenance on schedule. You can't just keep going because it's running. You need to pull it down every 3 races and replace everything that is worn. And that means bearings, rings, whatever it takes. The key to our success would have to be the people involved with our program. We have very dedicated people that have been helping us all these years. We've had our crew people that have devoted hundreds of hours of work. We've had our sponsors that have helped. It's just a whole program. There's never one thing that makes a racing program good. It isn't the best driver. It isn't the best crew. It has to be a combination. And I think that's one thing we've been able to do. We've had longevity. We've raced in Atlanta for 12 times. We've been racing Mini since 1971. We've stuck it out when it wasn't that great. We stuck it out when there were cars that were beating us regularly. Now that we're on top, we think we belong there. We've done the hard work.
So what are you doing? Putting a new motor in your car?
Yeah.
Loading a new motor in?
Fixing 4th gear.
4th gear?
Yeah.
Did you break? Did Doug break it?
No.
Boy, he sure is hard on equipment.
Wouldn't stay in gear.
Wouldn't stay in gear.
What I was saying about Doug being hard on the equipment, of course I was just kidding. Because I'd like to get a paycheck when I get back to the shop.
That's right.
That's all.
I began racing in 1974, and 3 years later, I'd known Mike Kearney for about 7 years by then, and he had been racing minis for several years. And in 1967, we decided to pool our effort, and he had the car, and I supplied some machine work and driving, and that's how we first got started off together. I didn't do a very good job of starting off our relationship because I was bedding brakes in one of the Saturday sessions, and I thought they were all faded and bedded in and ready to go, and I went into a corner and they weren't, and I went straight through the dirt and hit a double layer Armco barrier head on. And next time I saw Mike, it was at the end of a tow truck with the front end of the car smashed up. In comparing the race Mini to a street Mini in driving, there really isn't very much comparison. The race car is, you can feel that it's very light, very responsive because of the big tires, and extremely good handling. I think it's probably the best handling car out, literally, in the GT classes. It just doesn't have very much horsepower. but as far as actual in-corner segments, I don't think there's anything faster. A street Mini, is really limited, at least in my experience, and I'm sure there are other people that have done a lot more in street cars, but for my own car is really limited by the tires. Comparing front-wheel drive driving techniques to rear-wheel drive techniques, I found in racing there really is very little difference. A good racing driver will be able to, if he's never driven a front-wheel drive car before, will be able to get in the car, and I'd say within 5 or 10 laps, pretty much be fully competitive. The major difference really is being in a front-wheel drive car, you have to be very precise in your corner entry, because there is no such thing as power on oversteer. So you have to be very precise in your placement of the car so you can put your power down early, yet know that you're going to be drifting in basic understeer towards the exit of the outside of the track. And if you place it just right, you keep your foot in it and keep accelerating, and you'll drift right out to the edge of the track. Now, for example, in a rear drive car, if you get partway through the corner, find out that you're running wide, you can either put more power down or turn into the corner more and induce oversteer, which will allow you to get out of the corner fast without any problems. And that's something you can't do in a front drive car.
It's funny, but even after 16 years of racing, up to the time I get in the car, I'm still extremely nervous or apprehensive about what's going to happen on the track. But once you get seated in the car and belted in, and the engine gets started especially, all that evaporates, and all you're thinking about is getting the car set up for the start of the race, and kind of going over a game plan as to what you hope your ideal first lap's going to be. Once you get going here on the pace lap, the main goal is to get the tires warmed up, and you do that by weaving the car around the track, which scrubs the tires in and builds up heat. And you need that because the tires are cold because they've been sitting, and when you go into the first turn after the green flag, the cold tires could cause you a lot of trouble. So the main goal here is just to weave the car around and get some heat in the tires. And it's hard being up front because you know there's 20 or 25 other guys behind you who are want nothing more than to beat you. And the Mini's doubly hard in the Mini because it's relatively underpowered compared to the other cars, and they have a good chance of beating us into the first turn. Your hope is that when the green flag falls, that you are able to out-react your opponents and get a little bit of a jump on them, and hopefully that'll overcome their excess power, and you can beat them into the first turn. And luckily there, I was able to do that. I came down for a slow start, got on the throttle early, and was able to out-jump them and stayed ahead. The car went real well through turn one, and I was able to pull out a couple car lengths of an advantage. And with the tight corners coming up, basically that was it. I was able to pull out a little advantage, and coming up on the back straight, I was far enough ahead that they weren't able to get by me. And once I could complete one lap in the lead and get into the bridge turn, unless the car broke, I knew we had it made. Once you get out in the lead like this, even though it may be only the first couple laps of the race, you're already starting to hear things in the car and wondering if everything's going to be okay. When you're racing hard with somebody and you have somebody right on your bumper, you don't even think about those things. You're just concentrating on your driving. But when you have a big lead, you start daydreaming and thinking about other things, and you have to force yourself to concentrate on the job at hand, and basically I do that by even though I have a big lead, I drive as hard as I can. I just take it a little easy on the engine by shifting it lower RPM, maybe braking a little bit earlier, but basically still pushing hard through the corners just to keep the concentration level up. And the Mini's such a nice handling car that it's just a joy to drive. So it's you don't mind pushing it hard. Some cars are scary to drive fast, and you really don't want to do it. Here we are coming down the hill at the end of the race. It's really an exciting feeling to get that checkered flag because everybody's worked so hard to do it. It's been a full year project. This was a great feeling being able to do this for Mike and Steve and Bruce have all put so much effort into it. It was nice to be able to repay those efforts.
Peterson was up there, he's uncatchable. Man knows how to drive his car, deserves his championship.
Joining us in one circle now, getting out of his car, will be Doug Peterson in that right-hand drive Mini Cooper, the Comptech machine.
There you go, Doug!
Fortech California driver really turned it on out there. Giving you a big kiss and a lot of applause from his crew. Very happy man, Doug Peterson.
Hurrah.
Doug, congratulations. It looked like a Sunday drive, but I know that this car represents a lot of preparation, a lot of concentration, and an excellent drive.
Thank you. I'd like to thank a lot of people. Mike Kearney, Steve Maxwell, Bruce, they all worked real hard on the car to make it run all year long, and it was flawless. I'd like to thank Goodyear for the best tires, Valvoline for putting on this, for helping sponsor this series here, and it just worked great.
What went through your mind when you saw the green flag with the dollar sign on it at the halfway point?
Well, that was great. It just helps give Mike and the guys something for all their effort they've put into it.
Takes a lot of money and time, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this victory's for them.
All right, Doug Peterson, step up that number one spot. There's a gold medal waiting. Leanne, good undressing worth and get up there.
What a babe!
sometimes 3.